Okay, so this is the second part of the narrated PowerPoint. Sorry, I had a 15-minute time limit on this program that I'm using. So the last chapter Paterson has in the book is Constructive Confrontation. So this is actually, now we've done all the work, we've prepared for it, we've gone through those 10 steps, and now we're actually ready to confront this person. And so he gives us some tips or some things to keep in mind during the confrontation. So first is that relaxing. We talked about this early on. That's the stress response and the impact of stress and how it can cause us to either fight or flight, either be more passive or aggressive. And so relaxing, I know for myself, when I know I have a difficult conversation that I'm going to have, I try to take a few minutes beforehand, relaxing, taking some deep breaths, doing some positive self-talk, like this is going to go well, this is going to help the relationship. And so taking a few moments to relax and then trying to relax throughout the confrontation is really helpful as well. We want to be aware of our body language and our tone of voice, so an open, relaxed posture and an even voice. During confrontation, it's easy to move towards yelling, and so we want to, especially if the other person is getting upset, so we want to maintain that even voice. And then, like we talked about with giving negative feedback, we want to start with something positive and try to bond with the person. We want to acknowledge that this relationship is important to us, and that's why we're having this conversation. And we want to maybe acknowledge something positive that they do, but that there's an issue that you want to talk about. It's important, though, that in our relationships we give people positive feedback and positive compliments, even when we're not going to follow it with something negative. Otherwise, people, anytime that you start with something positive, they're anticipating that and that negative conversation to follow. So make sure that we are also having conversations sometimes with just sharing the positive. Then we want to make sure that we're using that script. Try to remember what, you're not obviously going to be reading from this, but remember those 4 components and remember to be concise and specific. And then take responsibility. Take responsibility for your emotions, for your behaviors, for what you want. That's where the importance of the I statements comes in. And then we want to remember that we're not trying to win. We're not trying to convince this person to see it our way. We're simply trying to express ourselves, our needs, our wants, our desires, our preferences. If we can avoid old history, often in confrontation, people will start bringing up things that happened prior, other issues, other kind of hot button issues. We want to avoid that and just focus on the current situation. So if the other person starts bringing things up, you might want to redirect and say something like, I understand your concern about that, and maybe we can talk about that at a different time, but right now I want to focus on this. We talked about this prior also, but avoid the absolutes, the things like you never do this, you're always like that. That puts the other person on the defense, and it also is almost never true. We very rarely always or never do something, and so they can find instances where they did something. So avoid using those absolutes. And then one of the most important but difficult parts about the confrontation is that providing time to listen. So you want to share, you want to describe the situation, express your feelings, give the specific behavior you want them to do, and then talk about the outcome. But then you need to listen and then reflect back to them what you're hearing. You want to reflect back to them the content. So I hear you're saying that you were upset by me being late to work, but then also reflect that emotion. It sounds like this really frustrates you. And it's important to do that reflection back to them so that they know that you're listening. We also want to try to find common ground. So when the other person brings up some points and you're like, oh yeah, I think we have some commonalities there. Recognize that and build on that. And often our motives might be the same. So for example, in a romantic relationship, we both want to have a good relationship, or we want to deepen the relationship, but our motive may be the same, but our route to get there, we may have different ideas about how to do that. But focusing on that common ground and recognizing that you have some common motives can be helpful to build on. And then give points to the other side. Often, if you see this as a win or lose, you don't want to give points to the other side. But what this means is when the other person is talking and makes a good point, says something that you can agree on, is mature or respectful in their listening or in their response, recognize that and say, I appreciate you listening, or thank you for doing that, or thank you for saying that. We have a tendency to counterattack, and after we've shared, if the person comes back with an attack on us or pushes one of our hot buttons, we have a tendency to want to attack back, and then it just becomes this battle between the two people. So we want to focus and stay on topic with what that behavior, what that change is that we want to see, and try to stay out of that counterattack mode. And then we talk about keeping your anger on a leash is really important during the confrontation, that although we may be starting to feel angry, we want to be able to manage that. And if we feel that maybe it's getting out of control, or we're going to become more angry, we may want to ask for some time, take a breather, say, I don't think I can finish this conversation right now, I need a little bit of time, and that's completely fine. Also, he talks about waiting out the silences. Some people need more time to process, more time to think, more time to come up with how they want to respond. And so allow for that silence. Don't feel that you have to jump in. And then lastly, after the confrontation, so now you've prepared for it, you've had the conversation, even if it didn't go as well as you would have liked, take a moment to reward yourself. Reward yourself for just doing it, because it's challenging. A lot of people avoid it altogether, and recognize the strengths that the good things that you did and the good things that came out of it. With that, we also have to monitor the results. So if we gave a positive or negative consequence, we need to, if the person followed through, we need to make sure that we follow through with that positive consequence. So if we said that the child could watch TV if they clean their room, then we need to reward that and allow for that. If we said that there was going to be a negative consequence if they didn't do something, then we need to also fulfill that. Otherwise, going forward, people are not going to listen or take seriously your request. So at this point, I've listed a few discussion questions. I just want you to take a few moments to think about these. If you want to jot down some notes, you can, but we will be discussing these in class. I will ask for your feedback on how you thought this PowerPoint went, and then we'll talk about the questions, and then we'll have an actual opportunity to come up with your own DSO script and practice practice confronting someone and using that script. And so I look forward to hearing what you thought about these final 3 chapters, and also what you thought about this format. We'll talk more about this in class, but just a reminder that next week, that is the week of April 13th, your literature reviews will be due, and that will be the day that we do your presentations. You'll sign up for presentations in class this week. And then the day of the presentations, I will also be providing a few final notes about the final exam. So I look forward to seeing you all in class. Thank you very much.